Welcome back. Today we are diving into Module 3 of the Discovering My Why course. So last week, or last module, I guess, depending on when you did it, we really talked a lot about passions. This week for Module 3, we're going to start on the first half of discovering your values, your core values. We're going to look at it from two angles. The first is starting with the defining moments in your life, and then diving into what beliefs or belief statements that you held true in those moments. But before we do that, I have a reflection question for you. So looking at your homework from Module 2, I'd like you to think about what is your greatest source of energy, the thing that lights you up. So I'll give you a minute to think about that. Feel free to pause, go back, reread your homework notes, and then join me back in a minute. So for this module, as well as the next module, you're going to need a couple tools. The first thing is some sticky notes. So the 3x3 size are ideal. So those are like 3 inches by 3 inches, the little square ones. Some type of writing, so pen or marker, and some masking or painter's tape if you have it. And then an access to a kind of clear wall. So remembering our formula, we've now talked about your skills and your talents, your passions or your loves. We're going to look at that bottom part, the alignment. So what all your decisions in life and things that guide your decision making are rooted in values. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the exercise that we're going to be doing to walk us through finding our values is called a journey wall. And it starts by reflecting on personal events, memories, situations that have had a lasting mark on your life. So I'd like you to think about what were some defining moments. Then we're going to look at what did you tell yourself in those moments. And then finally, which of those messages or statements of truth have been reinforced over time and have continued to endure. So using your sticky notes, start by writing down different life events, things that happen, factual events. They can be good, they can be bad, anything that has left a lasting mark in your mind. So start writing down some that come to mind. Now remember, the key to a brainstorming exercise, which is essentially what we're doing here, is only write one idea on each sticky note, because you may need to manipulate those by putting them, on the wall, and then moving them around. So essentially what we're going to be doing is building a timeline. So on one end, you've got today's kind of current time. And then on the other end, you can go right back into the decade that you were born in. And then plotting those sticky notes along the way. So when I built my timeline, I like to build kind of, further away, I did it by decade. And then as we get closer to current, I did it about every 5 years in terms of my little tick lines. So start by jotting down meaningful events. We call these the defining moments in your life. So the good, the bad, the in-between, anything that holds a strong memory for you. So really think about those times that triggered a belief to form, where you told yourself something that stuck. So here's my example. Now, I did this in an online tool called Mural, just so that I could capture it in a photo for a screen. So you can see I kind of went back every 5 years with kind of the major milestones, and more spacing as we get close to the current. So you can see, a whole pile of those sticky notes, and I ended up kind of having to cascade them in this online tool just because I couldn't fit them all side by side. So there's, you don't have to kind of cascade them down like that. That's just how I had to do it to fit them in. So I have, the very first thing for me, the first memory that I could really remember where I had kind of a strong emotion and told myself a story was when I started doing piano recitals. So that was the one activity I got to do growing up that was chosen for me. And so every year there were festivals and recitals that I had to participate in. All the way into kind of some defining moments through high school, and into my university years. So, there's certain things in here about, when I took on a new job, or, there may have been a certain project, things like, relationships that started or relationships that ended, any type of certification or anything that really triggered an event. So that's what you want to do as kind of step one is, write down those events and then plot them on your timeline. From here, we go through a process of really kind of reflecting and looking at that timeline. So when you kind of scan across kind of from, the oldest memories to the most current ones, the next step is really looking at what were some of the high points and low points. So on the high points, you can draw a happy face right on those sticky notes. Likewise, for some of the low points, draw a sad face on those sticky notes. So we're going to take some time to look at what a belief is. So really, the definition of a belief is an idea that a person holds as true. So it can come from your own experiences or experiments. It can come from the acceptance of cultural norms. So things like, if you're connected into a certain religion or religious body, there can be beliefs that have kind of been imposed on you from that. They can also come from what other people say. So for example, from teachers or mentors, people you've worked for, bosses, those sorts of things, their beliefs you may have taken on as your own over time. So when we go back and look at our journey wall, the next step after we've looked at kind of making note of some of those high points and low points is really looking at what were some of the events that triggered a belief to form, where you told yourself to be a certain way in that moment. So you can see from my journey wall here, I've got, a number of happy and sad faces along the way, and a number of stars that really show that particular event triggered something for me. And often those stars end up coming around those seasons where you had, kind of the highs or the lows. They may have been transitionary seasons in your life. So the next step is writing down what statements of truth were created on your journey. So for this, I like to use a different color of sticky note and put them above the timeline. So if I have all of my events below the line, these ones I would put above the line. So, you plot them, and I'll give you a couple examples here on mine. So you can see these ones looking at the blue sticky note. So these are what I told myself in those moments. So for example, going back to one of the very first formative memories I have was, in the piano recital days, where the story or the belief I told myself was practice makes perfect. And that requirement to make sure that I was ready to be on stage. There were, a number of other events here, and I'll just zoom in so you can see some of the other beliefs that I told myself in specific moments. So for example, being helpful is what's needed to feel included. Being liked is more important or is greater than being popular. So these were some of the beliefs that formed for me back in my high school days. Using time wisely to be successful, be proactive, anticipate scenarios, and get one step ahead. Research matters, the power of contacts. Again, these now are kind of moving into some of my university days and connecting to specific events that were triggered. Also kind of key to that era of my life was presentation skills are career skills. Think before you speak, hospitality counts, involve and inspire others is a quality of great leadership. Education will always serve you well. Company loyalty only goes so far. And so that was, that one was triggered by events that took place in a company that I had a senior leadership role in that went through some reorganization. And ironically, loyalty was a value that this company held, but the belief I took on after that is, from a corporate and company perspective, was that loyalty only goes so far and you need to look out for yourself. And so these are my values, and they, I'm not imposing them on you. And you can continue to read the other ones. So you want to write these as statements of truth in your own words that connect back to those defining moments. The next step is when you take and look at all of those cards, you can actually, what I do first is I take a picture of the wall before you start manipulating it so you can remember what it looks like. Then you can take those defining moments, sticky notes, and go through a process of clustering them. So really what we're doing here is looking at what ones can be clustered together where they create an even bigger idea. So you can see here that from all of my statements of truth, I created kind of 6 different buckets. And some have a lot of sticky notes, and some of them, were singletons that didn't go to anything else. So then we go through a process of coming up with a name for that cluster. And so what I do to help come up with a name is, first of all, I read each statement of truth out loud, like physically hear the words. Then I think about what insight comes from this cluster. What is it really about? Is there an overarching theme that connects all of these together? And from there, then I write, what is the belief I have accepted as true in my life based on that cluster? So here's an example for me. So one cluster had 6 different individual statements in it. So use time wisely to be successful. Company loyalty goes so far. Think before you speak. Research matters. Be proactive. Anticipate scenarios. Get one step ahead. And practice makes perfect. So the statement of truth that I derived from that, that I've held on to, has been being prepared and being independent is what creates success for me. So that's what Module 3's homework is. It's really going through this process of coming up with the your journey wall. So, creating your timeline physically on a wall somewhere, writing out the stickies of defining moments, putting the happy faces and the sad faces on the sticky notes that reflect highs and lows. The stars that reflect, I told myself something in this moment, and physically put a star on that sticky note. Then I say, the second major part of this is reflecting on that journey. Again, take a picture at each stage of this so you've got it and can catalog it. Is looking at what did you tell yourself in those moments that had the stars on them. Then again, take another picture. Then you can disassemble those defining moments, the ones that are above the timeline, and start clustering them where when you put 2 different ideas together, it creates something bigger, and keep going through this process until you land on however many clusters where they, each create their own unique idea. Then from there, you go through the naming process. So you can see from this slide on mine what the different names were that really articulate the statement of belief that captures the essence of that cluster. So here are some of the other ones for me. To be liked, you need to be considerate and be a person of excellence. Learning is the gateway to new opportunities. Lead by example in everything you do. Be a person of excellence. My daily habits drive my health. And the last one is, in my weakness, he is strength. So that one connects to kind of all different aspects of faith. And that was the belief that I held. So for your homework today, for Module 3, I've got a list of instructions as well as a worksheet. So, on this worksheet, it's designed that you can take each cluster, and lay them out on that sheet, and then come up with what is the statement of truth that you derive from that moment. So don't worry about the area part at the bottom. Just look at the statement of truth. We'll get into the areas in Module 4. So thanks again for joining me. Enjoy your homework. I think it will be very enlightening, and we will connect back for Module 4.